In the video, this calm yet slightly melancholic man is Luo Fuxing. Dressed in black with plain black hair, he's the kind of person who could vanish in a crowd. But over a decade ago, he was a commanding, almost legendary figure. He created a group known as Shamate. Mention that name and most people immediately picture colorful hair, exaggerated outfits, and heavy makeup. That's them, but also not the whole truth. Without the dramatic styling, they were simply migrant workers, many from similar backgrounds. Mostly left behind children from southern China, a group that looked fierce but was actually very vulnerable. Starting in 2008, they exploded across the Chinese internet in an incredibly short time. Then, just 4 or 5 years later, Shamate seemed to vanish overnight. So, what exactly is Shamate? Who were they? Why did they rise? And why did they disappear? To understand that, we start with their so-called godfather. Despite leading millions of Shamate, Luo Fuxing is actually quite young. Born in 1995, he became the godfather at just 13 or 14 while still in middle school. He is from rural Wuhua County in Meizhou, Guangdong. Growing up, he barely saw his parents at all. His parents worked away from home for years, often not even returning for the new year. Their marriage wasn't good, and the family relationship was strained. Luo Fuxing grew up with his grandfather, a typical left-behind child. By 5th grade, China's internet was just beginning to rise, and Luo was already one of its earliest young users, spending all his time online. School? He couldn't focus at all. He dropped out in his first year of middle school. In rural Guangdong, if you can't study, you go to the factories, the same path his parents took. So he went to Shenzhen and started working on the assembly lines. His first job was operating an injection machine in a microwave oven factory, earning about 1,000 yuan a month. The machine was taller than he was, a child handling a massive industrial device under pressure from life itself. Toxic fumes, heat, noise, dust. That was his daily environment. And the atmosphere was suffocating. One single repetitive task, thousands of times a day, for more than 10 hours straight. Workers barely spoke. Even if they tried, the noise drowned everything out. Wasn't hiring child labor illegal? Of course it was. But whenever inspectors came, the child workers were told to hide in the bathrooms and only come out after the coast was clear. Luo Fuxing soon grew tired of this life. After figuring out the factory's performance rules, he did just enough to meet the quota each month. After work, he played games, surfing forums, and chatting on QQ. Quiet and withdrawn, he had little connection to the outside world. The virtual world became the place that filled his loneliness. One day online, he saw a photo of Japanese visual kei artist Taka Ishihara. The look was stunning, a world apart from his trapped life in the factory. So Luo began to imitate him. He started with the hairstyle. A few days later, he walked into the factory with that dramatic new hair. With it, he felt crowned, suddenly confident, constantly switching styles, drawing stares everywhere he went. For the first time, he felt what it was like to be noticed. He even video called his QQ friends to show off the new look. Hearing that it got so much attention, they wanted the same. Within months, more and more people were doing it, dyeing their hair in intense colors, styling it into sharp, sculpted shapes, and even using extensions and wigs to achieve the most exaggerated effects. Luo Fuxing felt they needed a name. He thought of the English word smart, meaning stylish, sharp, fashionable, perfect for their vibe. He transliterated it into Shamate, but it still didn't feel powerful enough. So he tweaked it again, and it became Shamate. Then he created a QQ group called the Shamate family. Early followers flooded in. Seeing the numbers grow, Luo simply opened more groups. Group 2, Group 3, regional groups, local branches. People shared styling tips, posted their new hair for the day, and invented endless new looks. The place was buzzing. Shamate spread like a virus. Luo alone created dozens of QQ groups, each with thousands of members, tens of thousands in total. And that didn't even include the unofficial Shamate groups popping up everywhere. Soon, Shamate took over the streets, parks, sidewalks, skating rinks, internet cafes. They appeared in packs, impossible to ignore. It got so popular that, as some barbers recalled, every evening their shops were flooded with people asking for Shamate hairstyles. Normal business hours couldn't handle the flow. Most factories ended work around 8 or 9, and by then, long lines had already formed outside barbershops, all waiting to transform into Shamate. The hairstyles moved like an assembly line, one after another, until the early morning. But most of these youths were factory workers with very limited income. Many spent nearly all they had just to get a flashier, more dramatic hairstyle. Some even asked if they could put it on credit. The most devoted came back every few days. Skating rinks were also packed. Crowds of brightly colored youngsters glided lap after lap, as if voicing their silent scream through motion instead of sound. Some shop owners, seeing such outrageous Shamate hairstyles, even let them in for free. But the question is, why did Shamate become so wildly popular? In truth, the movement was made up of thousands of kids, just like Luo Fuxing. And Shamate flourished mainly in southeastern China, especially the Pearl River Delta. What defines these regions? They are major labor importing zones. Study Shamate more deeply, and you run into the issues of left-behind children and the factory labor system. There is even a documentary made long after Shamate faded, with Luo Fuxing himself as the associate director. In the documentary, every Shamate member interviewed shared the same background. They dropped out in their early teens, left home to work, and came from poor rural villages. Their stories were nearly identical, or rather, they barely had stories at all. Like Luo Fuxing, they were all left-behind children. At just 12 to 15, they traveled alone to big cities, found whatever factories would take them, and began long days of repetitive, low-skilled labor. They worked in dark, suffocating workshops. Even when they slept, their ears buzzed with the factory's endless roar. Their youth, the most precious years of their lives, were swallowed by the rumble of machines. They needed permission just to use the bathroom. No one dared slow down on the assembly line. After work, they returned to cramped dorms inside the factory compound, barely carving out a place to exist. They were too young. Their imagination was no match for the harshness of the city. Almost all had been deceived, exploited by factories, and beaten down by society. They didn't know who they could trust. One Shamate member recalled, she met another Shamate in the group. She came to find me, he said. I told her, I've earned money now. Come with me. I'll take you home. We'll get married. Wages that should have been 8,000 yuan were cut by a ruthless boss to just 29 yuan. The two drifted apart after that, missing their chance at a life together. People may wonder why they didn't fight for their rights. But these rural kids in their early teens didn't even know what a labor bureau was. Sometimes the Shamate family QQ groups became the last straw for unemployed youth. If someone typed, "I lost my job," members would immediately offer help or introduce new work. Though it usually meant just moving from one factory to another, young people slowly lost all color in their lives on countless assembly lines. So they turned to Shamate, adding color to their hair, because they wanted to be seen, wanted something different. Their hairstyles and outfits became a way to recognize each other, a way to stay warm together in a cold, unfamiliar city, better than struggling alone. Shamate faded almost in a single season. Maybe because the founder disbanded the QQ group in 2012, maybe because factories started banning long or dyed hair. But more likely, their exaggerated look triggered a wave of public backlash. Online and offline, people mocked them as brain dead. They were ridiculed, cursed at, and even subjected to violence. A group of Shamate were eating on the street when strangers at the next table attacked them, even setting their dyed hair on fire, just because, "I don't like how you look." Their rebellion against the world became the reason they were punished.
然后当时特别狠的时候，是我一个同伴被2个人按着用打火机把头发给漂了。
In the end, Shamate returned to reality, compromising with a humble life. Their leader, Luo Fuxing, pressed by survival and his father's death, took on family responsibilities. He now runs a small barbershop, earning just enough, sometimes still appearing in Shamate style. Today, some former Shamate wear suits, keep ordinary hair, and have settled in the city. Others never belonged to the city and went back to the countryside. Yet, whenever they talk about Shamate again, their eyes still reveal a longing for that time, a hunger for freedom, a need for belonging. They keep their old wigs, hoping that one day Shamate will reunite and rise again. Even now, many still preserve their colorful wigs from those years, as if trapped forever in a summer long gone. That's all for today's story. Thank you for watching.